I'm Amanda Rebel, licensed marriage and family therapist and bipolar parent coach. Today, we're talking about something that can feel really overwhelming as a parent, seeing your child entering a hypomanic or manic phase. In this video, we'll talk about how to recognize early warning signs so you can intervene sooner, how you can use techniques to lower the intensity of their mood, how to have ways to maintain the relationship with your child, and what accommodations to make when their symptoms are spiking. First, let's talk about why noticing and responding to symptoms is so important. The earlier you notice the warning signs, the more you can do to help prevent the situation from getting worse. Because once mania gains momentum, it's harder to bring down the intensity. But at the start, when you see the storm coming, you may have a window where your calming presence and strategies can make a real difference. So, what are those early warning signs? Now, your teen signs may be unique to them because bipolar symptoms can be different depending on the child. That said, keep an eye out for some of the general, more common symptoms like increased energy that seems different, sleeping less but not tired. You might notice irritability, rage, rapid speech where they're talking so fast you can barely keep up, or impulsivity, like suddenly making big plans, deciding to quit something, start something. I'm moving out, going to drop out of high school. I'm going to break up with them. Maybe they have big ideas that you can see just aren't attainable, but that they know they can do. And maybe they're in an extremely good mood. Also, here's something important to note, especially if your teen was recently diagnosed. Early on in a bipolar journey, before medications, treatments, and accommodations are figured out and implemented, and your child starts to find some stability, it can be really good practice to treat each mood change as a symptom. This means if you're not sure whether what you're seeing is typical teenage behavior or a symptom of bipolar, treat it as a symptom. Why? Because if it turns out to be typical teen stuff, no harm done. But if it is the beginning of mania and you wait, it becomes much harder to work with the illness. So let's talk about practical de escalation strategies because these are necessary tools to know when you see your child entering a hypomanic or manic state. Now, each of these techniques is designed to bring down the intensity of energy and help calm your teen's revving nervous system. So, reduce stimulation if you can. Mania feeds on chaos and noise. Lower the lights, turn off the TV and screens if possible, and minimize loud sounds. Try to create a calm, quiet environment. Even if your teen says they want more stimulation, their nervous system needs less. Remember, at the start of mania, their brain is already overstimulated, so by reducing external stimulation, you're helping calm their internal state. The trick is not to escalate the conflict by forcing these calming things. So, for example, if your teen starts to escalate when you say it's time to turn off the screen, decide if this particular battle is worth it in the moment, or if a different way to mellow the environment is possible, something that is in your control. Try speaking in a soft, steady tone. One of the things you can control and that usually doesn't set your teen off is speaking calmly and steadily. Your voice is powerful, and a quiet, controlled pace of speaking can actually help slow down their racing thoughts and racing energy. And it can help keep you steady during this extremely stressful time. Consider what's called grounding exercises. So, a lot of mind body stuff, such as taking deep, slow breaths, and maybe experiment by asking and seeing if they would take a deep breath with you. If they're resistant to that, just keep taking your own deep, slow breaths. You could offer them ice water. See if they would splash some cold water on their face. You can just have cold water in the room where they are because cold drinks and the cold temperature can help lower nervous system hyperarousal. Now, if they're feeling really creative and you know what they enjoy, get out the materials available, have them available so they can express their creativity. If they're interested in a project or goal directed activity, support them with it. And also find ways to transition them away from it when, for example, it's time to try to go to sleep. Now, if they're open to going outside and you can get into nature, go into nature. It can be really soothing for the nervous system to be outside, noticing what you're seeing and feeling that's natural. And consider exercise. And, there's mixed opinions about this. So, for some teens, exercise can really help them release some of their high energy. But for others, too rigorous of exercise can actually ramp up their energy. So, this is an example of how bipolar manifests differently in people. So, notice what may work for your child. And mindfulness practices such as yoga, something that's called progressive muscle relaxation, and simple stretching can help calm and balance the high energy. So, a mindfulness practice for the parents or caregivers. Notice your body language and nonverbal expressions when you're with your child. Try to have a relaxed posture. Decide if making eye contact with your child would be helpful or if it would escalate their mood. Give them physical space if they're agitated. You might consider side by side conversation rather than face to face. And again, continue to manage your own emotions. It is a skill to keep track of how you are feeling while you're also tracking what your child is saying and doing. Often, if we're not calm on the inside, it's going to be really difficult to show calm on the outside. So, we need to learn how to be self aware of what we're feeling, how we can self regulate, and how we can then respond to their needs. Now, consider limiting decisions and choices because a manic brain is already overloaded. Consider avoiding asking, "What do you want for dinner?" Instead, at first, say, for example, "Would you like chicken or pasta?" Keep it simple. It's not uncommon for people showing hypomanic or manic symptoms to not be hungry. However, sometimes it's the opposite. Some teens become more hungry when hypomanic or manic. And if your child says they're not hungry, continue to have your dinner routine, have food available for them, but don't push too hard for them to eat because, again, it could ramp up that irritability. Now, if they are hungry and demand, for example, leftover pizza instead of the food options you're offering, again, decide if setting the boundary of them having to eat what you're making is more important than just heating up the pizza for them so that their mood doesn't escalate. And as much as possible, avoid having sugar and caffeine in the house. If they like those things, if there's alcohol or substances in the house, I would strongly recommend moving those things out of the house. It's not uncommon for teens in general to experiment with substances, but with a teen who is experiencing a lot of impulsivity and wants to feel even more good, alcohol, drugs will help them feel that and will very possibly increase their mania. So just think about that. Again, if they like sugar, if they like caffeine, maybe get it out of the house, and same with substances. Now, give them space when they need it. Sometimes the best de escalation technique is stepping back. If your presence is agitating them and you're also getting revved up, it's okay to say, "I'm going to go chill. I'll check back in with you," or "I'm here if you need me," because we need breaks when parenting a child who is having symptoms, and we can't always control the outcomes of their symptoms immediately. So when our frustration, overwhelm, dysregulation hits, we have to calm ourselves. And remember, this is an illness. Mania or hypomania is not a choice, it's not defiance, it's an illness. And when they're having symptoms, they're sick. It's something they don't have control over. So you can think of the rage as this is a symptom of their illness. So, therefore, punishment doesn't work here because your teen's behavior isn't willful. Punishing them for manic behaviors will only damage your relationship, increase their shame, and probably their defiance. And it'll probably increase both of your stress, which can again make the mania or hypomania worse. So, some sort of non punitive, compassionate approach is good. I mean, it's not just kinder, it's actually more effective at helping them move towards stability and keeping you as balanced as possible as well. So, after they cycle out of hypomania or mania, you can process what happened together. But during the acute phase, your goal is safety, de escalation, boundary setting, and connection, not consequences. So take it one day at a time, 1 hour at a time, one transition at a time, one event at a time. Because mania can feel like it's going to last forever, but it won't. You don't have to solve everything today. You just have to get through today as best you can. So, riffing on the quality of the relationship here, many parents say that the quality of the relationship with their child is the foundation for everything else within their symptoms. So, when your teen is switching into a hypomanic or manic state, they need to, on some level, whether they're aware of it or not, feel safe and accepted and not judged by you, not controlled by you, but seen and validated. So, this isn't a time for the power struggles, the demands, the pleading, the trying to use logic because it's just not going to work. So, you may need to start redefining what the quality of the relationship is when they're having symptoms. It probably looks different compared to when they're not sick. So, for example, being able to problem solve with them, thinking about ways that the two of you can figure out how they can wake up on time for school, when they're not having a lot of symptoms, is a great sign of connection. Now, trying to do that same thing when they're having symptoms just won't be the kind of connection they can tolerate or need. So, we need to pivot our connection with our teen depending on their mood state. So, in the early stages of mania or hypomania, when symptoms are not at a crisis level, safety means emotional and relational safety. It means your teen feels seen rather than attacked, belonging instead of being alone in it. And when you stay present with them without judgment, you're actually deepening your relationship with them because, on some level, they understand that you understand what's happening to them. Now, if you meet your escalation with your own escalation, and trust me, it happens, things will get worse. And I can't emphasize enough, we're not perfect. As parents, we're going to make mistakes. We're going to be activated by their behavior. And it's okay. We're doing the best we can. So, as much as you can practice meeting them with a steady, calm presence, you become their safe place. And when they feel safe with you, they're more likely to accept your suggestions and boundaries in the future, especially when they're not ill. However, and this is critical, if your child enters a more aggressive state or begins talking about self-harm, engages in self-harm, or is harming someone else or is talking about wanting to harm someone else, then the concept of safety definitely shifts. Now we're talking about literal physical safety for your teen and your family. And this is when safety means concrete action steps, removing dangerous items, calling for professional help, possibly going to the emergency room. And we'll talk more about crisis intervention in another video. So let's switch to talking about accommodations. There are adjustments you can make to help prevent the mania from escalating further. And ideally, we want to set up accommodations for what they can handle ahead of time so that we can implement those when they're having symptoms. Now, accommodations means you're understanding and acknowledging that on certain days they have a more limited capacity to, say, go to school, do chores, finish homework. And so it's important for us to switch our expectations and modify um, what their abilities are when they're sick. So think about some basic accommodations, such as sleep. Can you create a supportive sleep environment if they're really struggling? Blackout curtains, white noise, medication, calm vibes in their room that they like, because sleep deprivation makes mania worse. And often changes in that sleep schedule or not getting enough sleep is actually the reason why they're starting to have manic symptoms. So, schedule. Can you reduce obligations? Maybe they skip that social event. Ideally, you've talked with teachers and staff already And there's a plan in place for accommodations at school when they're symptomatic. But again, at first, when you're just starting to realize they might have bipolar or they do have bipolar, it takes some time to set up a plan for school. So if you don't, just do what you think is best for your child. If that means they don't go to school for 1 to 3 days, that's just what needs to happen. Maybe they go to school for half a day. Maybe they really want to go to school. So just see what you feel like your child can handle and what would be best for them. So often this is an experiment at first, like I said. You're just trying to suss out like what could be the best choice for you and for your family. So stimulation, we talked about this earlier, and what can you reduce? Is it maybe fewer outings, quieter household, limited screen time, maybe just hanging out with one friend, maybe talking about, setting boundaries about what friends to hang out with. So, nutrition. Are they eating regularly? Like I said earlier, mania can suppress appetite or increase appetite, but just know that stable blood sugar does help with mood stability. Medication. This one's really important. Are they taking their meds consistently? Are they taking medication at all? Are the meds not working? Sometimes a switch into mania or hypomania might be an indication that there needs to be an adjustment in medication. Setting boundaries. So, for example, if a symptom of if you have a daughter, say your daughter's hypomania is increased impulsivity, substance use, and a history of hypersexuality, it might be a choice to consider setting the boundary that she can't go to that big party over the weekend. And this is to prevent any harm happening to her when she's in her illness and to prevent her from engaging in risky behaviors due to her symptoms. So, this is, I know, a very nuanced situation, but it's an example of when symptoms indicate your child needs protection and needs an adult to step in and advocate for them. Now, there may be pushback, screaming, aggression, slamming doors, I hate you, but sometimes we just have to hold our ground with certain situations. And so, another common and important example of a boundary is no driving when hypomanic. Absolutely no driving when manic. Non negotiable. If you are not babying your teen now with these boundaries, you're recognizing that their brain is struggling and needs extra support. So you're modifying their day to day. It's just like you'd accommodate someone with a broken leg. So, finally, know when it gets to the point of needing outside help. So, as I mentioned earlier, if we're moving towards more of a crisis situation, if you feel like they're hallucinating, if they say they're hearing voices, go to the emergency room, call your provider, because sometimes, despite all your calming efforts, mania progresses beyond what you can manage at home. And that's not a failure, that's just the nature of this brain disease. There's no shame in asking for help. In fact, sometimes it's one of the most important things you can do as a parent or a caregiver. So, just like if someone gets really sick, they need to go to the hospital. The same with full blown mania. They're really sick, and the hospital is oftentimes the best place for them. Trust your gut. If something feels like it's escalating beyond what you can manage at home, get support immediately. Now, supporting a teen through hypomania or mania and you being in the storm with them is one of the hardest things you'll do as a parent. But remember, you're not alone. And again, a reminder, the start of mania is an opportunity, it's your window. When you stay calm, prioritize your relationship with them, de escalate with compassion, accommodate their needs, take it one moment at a time, ask for help, know when what their symptoms are expressing is beyond your abilities. You give you and yourself and your child the best chance of moving towards stability. So, if you found this information helpful, please like and subscribe if you'd like. Drop a comment below. You could share what's working, what's hard, any questions you might have. So, thanks for watching and take good care.